Most photo slideshows are an in-person experience, meaning you share the images on a computer monitor or digital projector live in front of an audience. One of the great features of Lightroom 3 is the ability to generate a video file from a slideshow, making it both easier to present the slideshow in person and also easier to share the end result by sending the video file to others. To show you just how easy it is, I'm going to create a simple slideshow containing images captured while I was on safari in South Africa. I'll then generate a video file for that slideshow. In this case, I've created a collection of images that contains only those I want to include in my slideshow. After choosing this collection on the left panel in the Library module, I can switch to the Slideshow module to get started creating the actual slideshow. I'm going to choose the Crop to Fill template on the left panel. This will cause all of the images to fill the entire available space in the slideshow. That does mean that vertical images will effectively be cropped so that you can only see a portion of those images. But in this case, I want a slideshow that fills the screen so it's more impactful to the viewer. Because I'm using this option, I'll want to go through my images to make sure that all of them are cropped appropriately. Most of the images will have been resized in order to fill the available space. That means I can move those images around a little bit to find the portion of the image the viewer will actually see. I can do this by simply dragging on the preview image. The settings on the right panel are those established by the template that I've chosen, in this particular case the Crop to Fill template. However, I can customize my slideshow by scrolling through the right panel and adjusting any settings that I'd like to change. For example, in this case, I'd like the slideshow to present the images in a random order, and so I'm going to turn on the Random Order checkbox. At this point, I'm happy with my basic slideshow, but I'd like to preview it to get a better idea of exactly what the show is going to look like. So I'll simply click the Preview button, and Lightroom will generate the images necessary and show me the slideshow in the preview window here. I can view this slideshow, advancing manually to the next slide if I want to, or pausing it at any time. When I'm happy with the final result for my slideshow, I'm ready to share the presentation with others. Now, I certainly could simply click the play button, in which case the slideshow would play full screen so that I could share it directly on my computer or via digital projector with others. I could also export a PDF file, which I could send to other people via email. But the best option in my mind is the ability to export as an actual video file. This makes it easier to play the slideshow under a variety of circumstances, but also provides a very nice package for sending the image to others so that they can view it in its original quality exactly as you intended it to be viewed. When you click the Export Video button, a dialog box will come up that allows you to save the actual video file. You can choose the location where you'd like the video file to be saved and give the slideshow a name. In this case, I'll just call it South Africa, for example. We can also choose the video preset that we'd like to use. The default is 320 by 240, which means 320 pixels wide by 240 pixels tall. This is great for online video. If you're going to be sharing in a different format, you might want to choose a different resolution for the output. We can specify the particular resolution based on monitor or projector settings. We can also choose a video preset, which relates to the resolution for the final video. The default is 320 by 240, which is great for web viewing, but might not be adequate for larger presentations such as via a digital projector. You can choose a different resolution here to create a larger video file. When you're finished, simply click Save, and Lightroom will get to work processing your images and creating the final slideshow video. As you can see, the process of creating a slideshow as a video file to be shared with others is quite easy in Lightroom. All you need to do is choose the images to include, configure the layout of the presentation, and save the result as a video. It should come as no surprise that Lightroom allows you to print your photographic images, or even that it is possible to produce prints with multiple images on a page. What might surprise you, however, is just how flexible Lightroom 3 really is when it comes to creating custom layouts for printing multiple images. In this case, I want to create a simple montage of a few images to highlight my experience photographing the Palouse region of eastern Washington state. The first step, of course, is to identify which images I actually want to include in my print. In this case, my photo shoot contains over 3,000 photos, so it's not very realistic to dig through these images as I'm trying to create my print layout. Instead, I'm going to filter these images in this case only including images that have the red label assigned to them. Even filtering in this way, I still have over 100 images in this particular collection that I want to consider for my print layout. I've gone ahead and created a quick collection that contains only my most favorite images from this particular photo shoot. This contains 11 images, and so that will be much easier to sort through as I try to decide what the layout will be for the final print. Now that I have my images selected, I'll go to the print module. In this case, I'm using a template for a contact sheet so that all of the images on the film strip are currently included on the printed page. Of course, there are multiple options when it comes to the print layouts I can produce in Lightroom. Besides this contact sheet, I could also choose a picture package where the same image is printed multiple times on the same page, or I could choose a layout where only one image is printed per page. Of course, in this case, I want to create a montage with multiple images, and I want to exercise some creativity in that layout. So I'm going to choose the Custom Package option. In this case, I'm working with a template that includes 3 images on the page. I could also clear out these image cells or add new ones, as you'll see in a moment. But adding images to this print layout is incredibly simple. All I need to do is drag an image from my film strip into the print layout itself. If I mouse over one of the existing cells, you'll notice that the border becomes orange. If I release the mouse at this point, the image will be placed inside of that cell. I could then continue to drag additional images into my layout as desired. In this case, I'll just use the existing cells as a starting point, but then demonstrate the flexibility by fine-tuning this layout. For example, I can resize any of these image cells as desired. I can also move them around in the page layout. So for example, if I wanted to make room for an additional image, I could drag another image into my layout and customize the size and position of that particular image. I can continue to resize and move my images around until I'm happy with the final result. And of course, there's even more that I can do in terms of customizing the final layout. For example, if I'd like to add an element of branding to the page, I can turn on the identity plate and drag the identity plate to any area of the print I'd like. When I feel that I've fined the result to the point that I'm happy with it, I'm ready to produce a print. But it's not even necessary for me to produce an actual print on a sheet of paper. I can also print this montage to a file. By scrolling down to the bottom of the right panel in the print module, I can choose the option to print to a JPEG file rather than the printer. Then I can click Print to File, and the Save File dialog box will appear. I can type a name for my montage. For example, I'll call this Palouse Montage, and click Save to save the resulting JPEG image. I can then navigate to and open the JPEG image that was produced, and as you can see, I have my final montage saved as a JPEG image, ready for me to email or otherwise share with someone else. When I'm working with a custom print layout in Lightroom, it suddenly feels like I'm interacting much more directly with my photographs. I love that Lightroom is flexible enough to allow me to be creative in producing a print that contains several of my favorite photos, and yet powerful enough to keep the process simple. One of the things I appreciate most about Lightroom is the ability to share images quickly. And quick doesn't mean you have to compromise about the quality or aesthetic appeal of the presentation. For example, I recently took a cycling trip to Spain, and I'd like to share some of my favorite images from that trip with family and friends. With Lightroom, I can easily create a web gallery and have my images available to anyone in the world in a matter of moments. The first step, of course, is to select which images I would like to include in my web gallery. To do that, in the Library module of Lightroom, I'll scroll down on the left panel and choose the folder that contains the images I want to work with. Of course, in this case, as you can see, the folder contains over 2,000 photos. I don't want to share all of those images, or rather, nobody really wants to see all of those images, and so I need to narrow this down to just my favorites. Now, I've already gone through and applied a red color label to my favorite images within this particular collection. And so I can simply turn on the filters and identify that I want to see only my red labeled images. I can then scroll through to review those images, for example, to decide if I wanted to remove one of them from this collection. In this case, I've narrowed it down to 35 of my favorite images that I would like to share with family and friends. I'll go to the web module so that I can define exactly what I want my gallery to look like. Over on the left panel, I can scroll through the various templates that are included with Lightroom and click on any of them if I'd like to get a preview of what they look like. And of course, I could come over to the right panel and fine-tune any of the settings for this particular template. Of course, I've already gone to the effort of defining a template that I like for sharing my images. And so over on the left panel, I'll scroll down to the user templates and choose the template that I've created. Presumably, the template you create for sharing your images is something you'd like to use consistently. That means you'll be using that template for a variety of collections of images. That also means that we're going to need to update certain elements of this template to reflect the actual images we're sharing. For example, over on the right panel, you can see that this collection is simply called My Photographs. I'd like to give this a more meaningful name, so I'll simply replace it with Spain Cycling Trip, for example. I can also change the collection description. In this case, I've left it somewhat generic, but I can add a little bit of text to it in order to make it more appropriate for these particular images. All of the other settings are just fine based on the template that I've already created, so now I'm ready to actually share my images. I'll scroll down to the bottom of the right panel where the upload settings are found. As you can see, I've already defined settings for my own website, so all I need to do is to define a new folder where I would like to save these particular images. For example, I'll call the folder that will contain this gallery Spain Cycling, all one word, so that it makes sense for a website address. I'll then click the Upload button, and Lightroom will begin the process of preparing the images and creating the gallery files. In this case, I've already uploaded the gallery to my website. As you can see, this is an actual gallery stored on my website created by Lightroom. I can scroll through the images, navigate to a different page of the gallery, click on an image to get a full-size view of that image, and return to the index to look for other images. All I had to do was identify in Lightroom which images I wanted to share, which template and some specific settings that I wanted to use for those images, and then upload those to my website. The result is a quick and easy gallery that provides an attractive way to share images with your clients, friends, or family. As a digital photographer, you've no doubt accumulated a large number of images, and over time it gets increasingly difficult to find a particular image. In this lesson, I'll show you how Lightroom can make the task of locating a specific image among a large collection of images, the proverbial needle in a haystack, with relative ease. In this case, I have a particular image in mind. The funny thing is, I can remember some very specific details about the capture, but I can't remember where I took the image. It was late at night and I was wandering around a city looking for interesting vantage points from which to photograph. I know the image was captured with my Canon EOS 20D because I had that camera for quite a while. So to get started, I'll press the # key to bring up the library filter. I'll switch to the metadata option so I can choose some specific parameters to filter by. I'll get started with the camera model, so I'll choose camera from the pop-up at the left and click on the Canon EOS 20D. That reduces the number of images that match this criteria to only 13,442. Now I also know that this image was captured with my 24 to 105mm lens. That's my typical walkabout lens, so I have quite a few images that were captured with that lens. Of course, filtering by the camera body and the lens still only has me down to 5,668 images. Now, I know you might not believe me, but I actually remember that I captured this image at an aperture of f/16. I know this because it was at night and I was trying to get that starburst effect from some of the lights of the city. So I'm going to switch the third column to the aperture option. Scrolling down, I'll locate f/16, and this narrows me down to only 26 images that match this particular set of criteria. Now at this point I could probably scroll down through the images and find the one I want, but I'm not quite there yet. I also happen to remember that this image was captured with a shutter speed of 2 seconds. Don't ask me how I remember, I just do. So I'm going to add an additional column to my criteria and set that option to shutter speed. As you can see, I have a variety of shutter speeds to choose from, and among them is the 2-second option. And now I've finally narrowed it down to the one image that I was looking for all along. As you can see, it was indeed a night scene in the city, and I was trying to create the starburst effect with a unique perspective. I still don't remember the name of the city, but at least I was able to find the particular image I was looking for. Of course, the point here isn't that as a photographer you should remember every detail of every image you've ever captured. Rather, the point is that the library filter feature of Lightroom makes it incredibly easy to find a specific image quickly.
Lightroom is built for speed. It's a workflow application that's really designed to get you up and running as fast as possible and get you the results you need. Let me use a world example to show you how to go from camera to email fast. All right, so let's start off by importing. I'm going to get images off of my card I just shot the other day. I've selected the card reader over here on the left, and I'll have it eject the card after import, so it'll be all ready to be used again. In one of my example videos, I've set up an import preset. So I'm going to go ahead and use that preset with all my settings ready to go. So this includes the destination. I have my destination pre-programmed, as well as my file organization. And everything is set to go. I don't need to do anything. I'm going to hit import. So I've already started the import process because remember, this is an example of speed and the pictures are coming in. This was a real world example where I shot a bunch of pictures at a conference, a festival in Norway, and I want to get pictures as quick as possible to some of the participants who were there. And so I want to share these images, and you can see right away that there's a little bit of heavy lifting going on. Lightroom's having to move the photographs from the CF card onto my hard drive, and it's also doing some other things. It's renaming the photographs. It's applying a user template for the metadata. It's doing this all on the import, so I won't have to do this later. I can see my status over here in the bar, but at the same time, while this is going on, as the images are appearing in the library module in the grid mode, I can go ahead and start grabbing some pictures that I want to send off, get quickly off to the people I photographed. Here's one right away I want to get to, this gentleman here. So this is a chance to show the loop mode. I'm going to do a fast selection here. I want to get something off to Bill Atkinson, who was one of the participants in the festival. So I'm just using my arrow keys just to find something that will work there. That's a good shot of Bill. I'm going to test the sharpness real quickly, zoom in. There, it looks sharp, although maybe not as sharp as Bill may want it with his fancy camera there. And you can see the importing is still going on up here in the upper left. I'm working away on Lightroom. I'm not going to do anything to this picture except send it off to Bill, right off as an email. So I've selected it, and over here at the left panel, I see that export is an option, so I'm going to click on export. That brings up the export dialog box, which tells me it's exporting one file. And I'll select one of the Lightroom presets for email. And I could go through if I wanted to and really come up with maybe a little bit bigger in size. There's a lot of things I can do, but I'm really into speed. So I'm just going to take what they're offering here as a preset. I do want to be sure it's showing in Finder. It selects here because I want to know where it's sending that picture. I'm going to look here, choose folder later. Let's go ahead and put it in the original folder. And if I want to put it into a subfolder for email, that way I can find it easy. Altered this preset a little bit. Now I'm going to hit export. And you can see now there's two operations going on at the same time. Up here, well, actually just now one, but there was two for a second. You saw how fast that happened. And there's the picture all ready to go for email. And all I have to do is drag it onto my email program. It's all set. I'm done. I'd like to show you the use of one of the old tools from Lightroom 2 and one of the new tools in Lightroom 3 to improve this picture that you see on the screen. I'm going to start with the graduated filter found here in the tool strip. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to use the exposure effect with the underexposure of 1.18. I can change that at any point. And I'm going to hold my cursor at the top of the image area, outside the image itself. And I'm going to hold the Shift key and then click and drag. That'll constrain the filter. And you can see what's happening to my sky. It's being revealed in all its glory. And I can go back over here and move that exposure slider and make it even more dramatic. This is imitating the graduated filter of the old days in film photography. So once I get the look I want there, I'm going to select the tool again and it goes away. Now, before I show you what I'm doing next, I want to point out a problem with this picture. I'll need to enlarge the picture a little bit to give you the full effect. You see this edge. Maybe you can see it better if I put the crop overlay here and then click outside of the crop area. And you can see how these edges of these buildings, they're not parallel at all to the parallel line. This is just a common result of shooting down on an object, in this case with a wide-angle lens. The building's distorted. And in order to get those lines straight, I would have needed a camera with a tilt back that would have allowed me to get the perspective just right. And the eye, you can see it when you're looking at the picture. Let me go out of the crop overlay. You're aware that there's distortion there. And I mean, some people may react more than others, but the fact is that there is distortion in this picture. With Lightroom 3, the lens correction capabilities, we can fix that. So let me open that up. And I'm going to go into the manual mode, which you can see is already selected. And I'm going to now click on the vertical. So watch the edge of the building where I showed you before. And I'm going to try to line that parallel to one of the lines. I'm checking all the edges on my buildings in the foreground. You can see how that works. I'll do to the extremes. And then I'll bring it back. And there, I've got that lined up nicely. And you can see immediately one of the problems with this type of distortion, this vertical distortion, I'm losing some of my edges here. So I can make up for that by selecting the scale slider. Just crop right to there. And that looks good. And let's see how that picture looks now. I'm going to hit the Tab key, which will get rid of the panels on either side. And I'll select the L key, which is giving me the lights out. I think that's really much better, don't you? Some of you may remember the old days when we chose a color film based on its look and feel. So, for example, if I wanted to shoot something, the highly saturated colors, I would choose, say, Fujichrome. And if I wanted a more neutral color, I'd pick the Kodak Ektachrome. With Lightroom, this is one of the things I really use a lot, as well as the ability to choose different profiles. And I'm over here in the camera calibration pane in the right panel of the Develop module. And you see here under Profile, by default, we'll apply the Adobe standard. This is the Adobe look. And this picture that's up on the screen now is just right out of the box. It comes straight in from the camera, and then it has the Adobe standard profile applied to it. But watch what happens when I click here. These settings that show up are manufacturer specific. So when I select Camera Vivid there, this is a look that kind of mimics what Nikon calls the Camera Vivid. Canon users and other camera users will find different options here in this pop-up menu. But I go through here right away before I do anything to my image in terms of tones or white balance, because I want to see what these profiles do. And maybe I'll find one that I'll rather use as a starting point than the standard Adobe profile. So you see the real difference between, say, landscape and neutral. And I haven't touched any of the tonal controls at all. In this case, for this picture, this will be my starting point now, this profile, the camera landscape, which again is kind of specific to the Nikon models, and Canon would have a different name for it, but it would be the same idea. You can see there's much more saturation in the blue. Overall saturation is increased. I would say this is probably closer to what we knew as Fujichrome and used to bring out the saturation in the colors. So this is just something in Lightroom that is just at your fingertips, hardly any work involved. Some people, instead of popping through one by one like this, they create a preset based on those settings, and then you can just roll your cursor over it and see the immediate changes and get an idea if that's the profile you want. Just one more thing in Lightroom that makes your images look better and you look better. One of the most useful features of Lightroom, and one I use a lot, is virtual copies. Let me show you what I mean. Here's a portrait I made, and I want to apply different effects, different treatments to the image. I'm going to make virtual copies of this image. I'm right-clicking on the image in the library module and create virtual copy. That's one. I think I'm going to make more than one, actually. I'm going to make 3 virtual copies like that. That's my original. And I'll start here. I'm going to go to the Develop module. You can see all my copies are down here in the tool strip. I have some presets that I've created that I'm going to apply. Here's one called Intense Color. And then I'll go to my next virtual copy, and I'll choose another one of my presets, Soft Black and White, and then I'll end up with Soft Sepia. All right, I'm going to hit the G key, take me back to the library module. And now I have 4 different versions of the image. There's the original, there's 1, 2, and 3. There's no cost involved in terms of taking up more space on my hard drive. These virtual copies virtually take up hardly any space. So they're fantastic for that. And I can just keep these in my library. I don't have to delete them. I just keep them there, and they're always available for me to look at. That easy. I just love it. Absolutely love it.